We also want to bring in Alexis Glick. She's a former Wall Street executive and CNN economics and political commentator Catherine Rampell. She's also a columnist for the Washington Post. Ladies, great to have you here. Alexis, is there anything that you heard in the president's speech today, or is there anything you didn't hear? Is there some creative solution to giving Americans a little relief that the White House hasn't thought of?
Well, I mean, essentially what the president and the administration is trying to do is use the levers that they have control over. So what are those things? Things like opening up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to reduce the price of gasoline and oil prices. As Richard just rightly pointed out, the record rate, oil prices are up 50% in a year. We're at record highs among gasoline prices. We haven't even started talking about food prices. We have the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, out tomorrow. And expectations, while last month we saw an 8.5% increase, we're expecting at least an 8.1% increase. So what I would say to you, Allison, is what the administration is trying to do right now, whether it be with energy prices, whether it be with renewable credits, right now to foster renewable energy and take our dependence off of oil down, or what they're trying to do to fight inflation, particularly in the lines of the Federal Reserve Bank. They're trying to use the tools and the leverage that they have. But Richard raised something very important that we cannot ignore, and that is China, China, China. It is not just the nature of the lockdowns that we have witnessed in Shanghai and Beijing. It is what will China's disruption do to an already stressed supply chain and an increasingly short labor market. Those are huge headwinds for the marketplace right now to address, and that means turbulent waters for at least the next 2 to 3 quarters.
Catherine, the president, speaking of China, said that his administration is still discussing whether to lift those tariffs placed on Chinese goods imported to the U.S. that were placed by the Trump administration. Would lifting those create a significant improvement of the environment, the landscape economically here in the U.S.?
It would make a difference. It wouldn't make a huge difference, but my feeling is they should be using every tool at their disposal. This is the number one economic concern, the number one political concern for this White House and for Democrats going into the midterms. So, yes, tariffs should be on the table. By the way, there are a whole bunch of other tariffs implemented by the Trump administration that Biden has been sort of slow-walking the repeal of, or has replaced them with other kinds of trade restrictions instead. These are tariffs on our allies, including Ukraine. For supposedly national security purposes, Trump put those in place. So yes, there are a number of trade restrictions that would have some marginal effect. There was a study out of the Peterson Institute that found that if you rolled back kind of the full suite of tariffs that were put in place, or some portion of them that were put in place by Trump, that would bring down prices by 1 to 2 percentage points. That's not nothing. You know, I'm sure that would be welcomed by the American people.
Richard, I mean, it doesn't appear, tragically, that the war in Ukraine is ending anytime soon. Is there anything short-term that could turn this around?
No. To be blunt, to be honest, no. Because what you're really looking at here, Alison, is 12 to 15 years of cheap money. You've got to go back to when it all started in 2008 and 2009 with the debt crisis and the subprime mortgage. And yes, things got better, but interest rates remain ridiculously low. And every time they tried to normalize, more money got pumped in, and we went from crisis after crisis until the point where the pandemic tipped everything over the edge. So no, I don't believe so, because you are literally what the war in Ukraine is doing, which is, if you like, exogenous. It is rewriting the rules of globalization and the global economy. And it is doing so under the wit of a gun and a bomb. And it is painful and messy and deadly. And that is why the ripple effects are so horrendous.
Alexis, help me understand something here. The price of a barrel of oil is down. When I looked away, I was just checking the price of it. However, the price of a gallon of gas is up. Explain that, if you would.
Well, there's a couple of factors. Number one, we're seeing oil prices pull back slightly because of those lockdowns in China. They are importing less oil right now. The question is are we refining gasoline at a fast enough rate and able to pull down those prices due to the demand that we've talked about with those supply chain concerns and trucking and a whole host of other influences? The key thing here to help you understand for the consumer sitting at home is the following. The average American consumer right now is on target to spend $2,000 more at the pump this year. If you look at food prices alone, they're on target to spend at least another $1,000 per household on rising food costs. If you factor that in for low-income households, which is what the administration is trying to address, that means that we are going to really see a lot of pain. The kind of pain that we have not seen in years. So what we are dealing with, to Richard's point, is a very unprecedented moment in American history. In global history is actually the fact of the matter. And that is because we have all these supply chain shocks and labor shortages brought on by the economy reopening. I was just in an airport yesterday. The lines were off. I've never seen lines like it before. People are anxious to get back out, but they're starting to see it in their wallet. They're starting to see that discretionary spending actually deteriorate because they're seeing such a rapid rate of inflation. So what is really tricky about this is if you're the Fed, you have to address inflation by raising rates. What you're trying to do is create what's called a soft landing and not take us into recession. And if you're the administration, what you're trying to do is figure out how do we help real world Americans who are now starting to just beginning to see the tea leaves of the pain and make sure that that pain does not get exceptionally worse as we particularly head into the midterm elections, or frankly, if we teeter on the brink of a recession in 2023. Those are the kinds of things we got to worry about. Last thing I'll just say is don't take this idea of a food shortage lightly. This is a huge global issue that could become a global crisis.
Catherine, I couldn't help but notice there was different language that the president was using today, which was MAGA Republicans, and they have this, MAGA Republican, I can't remember verbatim what he said, but sort of radical plan for how to, tax us out of this. Why so political now?
Well, I think what the president is trying to point out is that while the White House and Democrats have come under fire for inflation from Republicans, Republicans themselves don't have an alternative plan. They can duke it out with Mickey Mouse and fight some other culture wars, but they haven't really proposed their own alternative for getting prices down. And that's because it's very difficult. As we've been talking about, there aren't that many tools available. The specific plan that Biden talked about was a proposal from Florida Senator Rick Scott that would effectively raise taxes on half of Americans, which I think he probably didn't think through entirely and, would not be terribly popular. Although, to be fair, a lot of other Republicans have distanced themselves from that particular proposal, and even Rick Scott has walked it back. So I agree with the president that Republicans haven't really offered a compelling alternative economic agenda. I'm not sure that that is the most representative example of what their economic agenda would be, but it's a really hard problem right now, and neither party has a solution because to some extent, to a large extent, major macroeconomic trends are out of the control of the president and Congress.
Yeah, a lot more to talk about, and we'll do just that. Catherine Rampell, Alexis Glick, and Richard Quest, thank you.